There is one word you would use to summarize the year of 2020. What word would you use? Crazy? Tumultuous? Scary? Silent war? What about sacrifice? Loss? Difficulty? Attending school without pants? These are all words I've heard come from students and teachers alike that I know personally. The one word that I would use is fight, or fight for more than just survival, but fight for to thrive. We all have had to adjust to changes this year, and I think our little ones may have had to make more adjustments and sacrifice than most of us realize. And yet we have adjusted to meet the challenges in front of us. The biggest challenge in front of this generation is the statistic of the declining education system, a challenge that has been ongoing for decades. Prior to the decline, we had a cultural shift to the social structure of this country. Family was the center of the education system, and the parents held the primary responsibility to educate their children. As we have taken on busy lives in this industrial revolution, responsibility has transferred from the parents to the government. Teachers have become the parents of 30-plus children each, not having the time to give each child the attention they deserve and need. There, however, is one model of education that sticks out from the crowd. The homeschoolers have for decades scored higher statistically on tests than any other model, and they are generally more successful in life in general as adults. The current pandemic has forced us into a blended homeschool model, one I have heard many positive comments on from students and teachers alike. They also more commonly complain about the struggle and fight to change, but the overall benefits are positive. Positive benefits similar to what the average test scores are for homeschoolers as shown in this graph. And as you can see, on the left-hand side is the high end, and the right-hand side, or my right-hand side, is the low end. And the low end represents our traditional education system, and the high end represents homeschoolers and how they score on such tests. And you can see it's significantly higher on my left side. So my first goal of this speech is to persuade you of the inadequacies of the current formal education model. Secondly, I will show the benefits of an informal model of education that is similar to homeschooling. And finally, I will review how the informal model opens up opportunities for students to explore their talents and abilities. Education is a fundamental right that every American should enjoy and benefit from. Ideally, the role of education is to provide the necessary skill set and stepping stone for future success while offering for the individual to grow their careers. The current education system in the U.S. is formal in nature, with the state government setting the overall education standards. Notably, the formal education system follows a specified path in which a student has to attain a certain age to proceed to a given grade. The preschool education is offered to students in the ages of 3 to 5 years, after which they attend a compulsory education that is elementary school, middle school, and high school. One of the most conspicuous elements of this education system is that it applies standard tests as a key aspect to determine the effectiveness of educators. Moreover, it is used to grade students according to their academic abilities. However, evaluating students solely on their academic abilities in a standardized way has been identified as a major hindrance to diversity and growth of all students. The disadvantage this gives some students is the primary reason why the United States needs to exploit alternative education systems, specifically an informal model. Now that I have demonstrated how the current education model is inadequate for our current culture, I will present the solution of the informal model that put the students and parents at the top and not teachers and the state. The once popular TAG initiative that separated students for the sake of an individualized learning initiative is no longer very effective. It offers no diversity to all students, and singling out the gifted, it is argued that the current system has grown monotonous, outdated, and unattractive in the contemporary American education culture. The current push is for public schools to find better approaches towards identifying different types of talent in schools, which goes beyond the current gifted model. Protagonists of educational reform argue that the current program does not mirror the dynamic and ever-evolving contemporary student body. For example, there have been giant leaps in technology over the last few decades, which means that the disciplines have opened up that didn't exist 20 years ago. Students now may indulge in talents that did not exist before, such as coding and computer programming. Whereas these areas of study were relatively new, the existing protocols to identify such gifts in students have not yet been put in place, which means they may go undetected and end up wasted. With an informal approach, this problem is solved, and students will have better opportunities to pursue such things that appeal to them, not just computer programming, but anything they desire at an early age, and it will be identified at an early age, hence fostering specialization. Lastly, let's review how the informal model opens up opportunities for students to explore their talents and abilities. In his book, Education in America, Stephen Meyer describes informal learning as a learning that does not follow the traditional expectations of education. He postulates that the main difference between informal and formal learning is that the former does not include specific set objectives as for the learning outcomes expected, whereas formal education involves goals, objectives, and expected outcomes. Informal learning is not even intentional from a student's standpoint. Moreover, Meyer also notes that traditional education was teacher-centered, with the educator serving as the knowledge provider and the student coming in for knowledge acquisition. The informal approach is different, with the learning defined as a continuous process. They go home and learn, and they learn at school, and it's a 24/7 thing, where it is characterized by participation and knowledge creation. This means that formal education is dependent on knowledge acquisition, while informal education relies on collective and continuous knowledge creation. In the modern world, innovation and continuous improvement is paramount in all facets of the economy. It is significantly more effective to adapt an education system that embraces innovation and knowledge creation, as opposed to one that depends on the educator to provide information to the students. With a flexible education system, the students are presented with a unique opportunity to explore their talents and abilities to come up with unique creation. With the help of the teacher, these students can achieve even greater targets than just relying on knowledge from only one side of the divide.